entrevisté a Reva Goujon, quien es vicepresidenta de análisis global de Straftfor. Le pregunté sobre sus expectativas sobre la política exterior de Estados Unidos, especialmente ante la llegada de Donald Trump a la presidencia y su relación con México.
Well, Trump has articulated his policy as America first, right? And he said that he fully respects, from Mexico's perspective, that Mexico will be pursuing policies that put Mexico first. So there's been a lot of rhetoric on cracking down on immigration legislation, deportation increases, building the wall, renegotiating NAFTA, raising tariffs, all sorts of things. We do have to keep in mind, though, that a lot of that was rhetoric during a campaign. And now that he's in office, there are going to be a number of constraints that do come into play. Economically, it would hurt the United States very deeply to just renegotiate NAFTA very suddenly or repeal the deal unilaterally, and that is not something that's likely to happen. The U.S. doesn't have the factory capacity to make up for what it has integrated with Mexico currently. And that would only bring more economic pain to many of the voters in the United States who support Trump. So, this is likely to be a very phased, gradual negotiation when it comes to NAFTA, focusing on things like local content regulation, environmental regulation. But this is something that I think is going to take years really to work out with all three parties at the table. Even when it comes to immigration policy, that's another thing where, even if more funds are appropriated to immigration enforcement authorities in the United States, that's something that takes time for that to come through, for those funds to come through, for those teams to get built up. We're not going to see a sudden spike in deportations or anything like that. We could see some tightening of regulation over time, but I don't think that's going to create any sudden reaction. All in all, though, I do think that the uncertainty that's raised from growing protectionism in the United States and what that means for U.S. trade policy overall, that does raise a certain amount of uncertainty. And that, of course, negatively impacts Mexico, as this remains in limbo for a very long time. And so, given it's more of that perception of uncertainty that's really going to have the most immediate effect. And of course, the Mexican peso has already felt the brunt of that, investments getting delayed and things like that. But I think that's particularly what we're looking at in terms of the U.S.-Mexico relationship. No big sudden moves, very gradual negotiations, but it's that uncertainty that prevails and that could cause more of that negative economic impact.
También le pregunté si consideraría la posibilidad de un impacto negativo tanto en la economía de México como en la de Estados Unidos con estos cambios en la política exterior.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, as I said, it's that uncertainty in and of itself and a protracted negotiation, that could result in things like delays to investments, and have downward pressure on the Mexican peso, things like that of course are hitting Mexico at already a difficult economic period for the country. At the same time, the U.S. is experiencing an economic recovery, and Mexico is intricately tied to the United States, and those linkages do not disappear overnight. Those are very likely to endure even beyond a Trump presidency. So while Mexico will have to contend with the uncertainty that comes from ambiguity around U.S. trade policy in particular, and just overall friction, the country will benefit from a stronger economy in the United States, and over time that leading to more business opportunity and things like that. So it does balance out to some degree, but this is still going to be a very difficult economic year for Mexico in particular.
Finalmente hablamos sobre la elección de Wilbur Ross como el nuevo secretario de Comercio de los Estados Unidos, además de los desafíos que enfrentará nuestro país con el vecino del norte.
In regards to the particular individual, I can't say for sure in regards to his particular views, but again, I do think that there is a very clear intent by the incoming U.S. administration to renegotiate NAFTA, that there's this general skepticism toward trade agreements overall that can harm U.S. Low-income workers. But even if there is that point of view, North American integration through its economic links, tightening energy links as well, those are things that I don't think we're going to see greatly compromised. We are going to see some protectionism come into play, but it's going to be a lot harder in that U.S.-Mexico relationship.
Esa fue la participación de Straftfor en el financiero Bloomberg. En más información, el presidente de Estados Unidos, Barack Obama, acabó con las especulaciones